Stay strong, stay strong. 8 minutes, 46 seconds, my days long, days long. Marching, protesting, singing them same songs, same songs. My mama, my brother praying I make it on. I came home. Stay strong, stay strong. 8 minutes, 46 seconds, my days long, days long. Marching, protesting, singing them same songs, same songs. Mama, my brother praying I make it on. I came home. It ain't because I'm reaching that I'm out here preaching. I'm preaching for a reason, saving life this season. Camera phones recording, showing them acting out.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Game. I'm Zachary Draves. Today marks the last day of Pride Month, a special time of the year to promote visibility, dignity, and equality for the LGBTQ+ community. Pride is an acknowledgement of the Stonewall Rebellion that occurred on June 28, 1969 at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, where patrons at the famous bar fought back against police violence and officially launched what is now the modern-day LGBTQ+ movement. This Pride Month has been especially memorable for many reasons, not the least of which what has been going on in the world of sports. This month, we saw Las Vegas Raiders tight end Carl Nassib become the first active openly gay player in the NFL. Openly queer sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson wowed us at the Olympic trials and gave a special shout out to her girlfriend as well. New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard will become the first openly transgender athlete to compete in the Olympics. American BMX rider Chelsea Wolfe will become the first openly transgender athlete to compete for Team USA. The presence of LGBTQ+ athletes is more prevalent than ever. And while we need to celebrate this progress, we still need to confront the ongoing attacks on LGBTQ+ people, particularly the trans community. 2021 has seen a surge in anti-LGBTQ+ bills popping up in various states that seek to criminalize the participation of trans women and girls in sports. These bills are based on a problem that doesn't exist and only result in further marginalization of a community that is already vulnerable to discrimination, harassment, and violence. Sports needs to be a safe space for all to enjoy and all to participate. And that is why, to conclude Pride Month, we will dive right into discussing the current state of the LGBTQ+ athlete. Joining us are Lendale Johnson, America's first openly gay professional tennis player since 1968, and Karleigh Chardonnay Webb, transgender activist, journalist, featured writer at OutSports, and co-host of the podcast Transporter Room. Lendale and Karleigh, thank you both for joining us on Beyond the Game.
Great being here.
I'm excited.
Oh, it's exciting to have both of you here. So, as I said, this has been a Pride Month to remember, certainly in the sports world. So, Karleigh, I'll start off with you. What has it been like to bear witness to so much going on this Pride Month in the world of sports?
It's been a whirlwind. I can tell you that. Seeing Laurel Hubbard selected for New Zealand's Olympic team, seeing Quinn selected for Team Canada, seeing Chelsea Wolfe, even as an alternate, getting on Team USA, seeing Layshia Clarendon having a recharge right now with the Minnesota Lynx. He's been impressive since moving from the Liberty to the Lynx. They've been on fire, and I think that's that's a feel-good story of this WNBA season. But mainly seeing that these issues and that people are stepping up and stepping into it and really having these discussions, even as performative as it's going to look and as tentative as it looks right now, seeing the NFL's ad a couple days ago. Granted, it's a start. And it's a start for a league that has always been traditionally staunchly conservative in the way it approaches the social justice issues, even up to the proclamations it's made the last couple of years. So no, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a lot of activity. This has been quite a Pride Month as a whole, and in a sense, I call it the comeback Pride after the year where Pride had to be largely virtual. But even with this, I think we as LGBTQ people, and by the way, for journalists, much love to Christina Carl right now. I mean, because a couple months ago, she became the first transgender person to be named an editor at a major daily newspaper in this country. That's a historical first. I mean, running the sports at the San Francisco Chronicle, way to go. But we have a lot of work to do. This Pride cannot just be a celebration. It has to be, in a sense, a war council, because we have a critical thing, especially in this country, and it's called the Equality Act. That fight is just beginning. And that is a 100-yard drive with 3 minutes left, if you want to put it in sporting parlance. That is how critical that fight is for codified rights for all. And that should be a major target as we head out of Pride and forward into July, August, and beyond.
I like how you said that this Pride is really a comeback, given obviously everything that had transpired over the past year with COVID and everything else. So to kind of see where we were then to where we are now with Pride, it's just remarkable. And so, Lendale, let me ask you, given everything that has happened this Pride Month, when you see athletes starting to come out and share who they are and to take pride and to stand their ground in who they are, how much has that of seeing this level of visibility, did you ever think that you would see this level of visibility in sports, given your journey and where you and what you've achieved in your career?
I feel like it was going to take a lot longer, but I think it's happening faster than I expected, and I think that just has a lot to do with just people being really, visible. The LGBTQ athletes being visible. We've had Martina Navratilova pave the way. We've had Billie Jean King pave the way, and other LGBTQ athletes. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely. And to Karleigh's point earlier about Pride, obviously it's a time for celebration, but then also it's a time to sort of reflect. It's a time to reflect on where we were and how far we've come, but it's also a reminder of so much work that has to be done. And clearly with what's been going on in various states, with all these anti-LGBTQ laws that are introduced that criminalize and seek to bar trans women and girls in particular from competing in sports. I mean, Karleigh, let me ask you, why now? Like, where is this coming from all of a sudden, where, this issue is starting to be talked about in ways that we had never seen before?
Before I answer that question, Lendale mentioned you mentioned someone very important, and I want to minister them for 1 minute. I need I need to do some ministry for me.
Okay.
Miss Navratilova, Martina, speaking as a person who is a fan of yours growing up, Martina, you've built such a legacy for people. You built such a legacy for yourself. Don't throw it on the pyre of transphobia, girl. Don't do it. Please, Martina, come on home. Come home. Do not sell your legacy out to sign on to support a group who's supported by the very people that's putting up these bills. And with that, I can answer the question, Zachary. This is a coordinated attack, not just against trans people, but all LGBTQ people. And I'm not saying anything that people like the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Family Resource Council, and Focus on the Family. Of course, they're never focused on my family. We have the wrong paint job. Don't say about themselves. And to anybody who says, oh, Karleigh, that's such a conspiracy theory. No, read their position papers. Hey, don't forgive them, Father. They know what they do. This is how it starts. Keep those trans kids out of sports, and then keep them out of the locker rooms. Next thing you know, the bathroom panic starts. And by the way, the Supreme Court says we're not hearing the Gavin Grimm case. That's good for now. But you can bet the ADF or someone like them are going to put a lot of money into somebody else trying to push that envelope open. You see, if you take away the bathrooms, what do? You basically keep transgender kids out of school. And then by extension, once you start going out, after you go after the kids, then they start coming after me. There's already one state where there's a bill plan to try and ban me from getting affirming health care. I'm 50. And you're going to tell me as an adult what I can and cannot do? That's how far they're willing to go. that effectively would take me out of employment. I mean, then take away public accommodations to me as well. Takes me out of employment, takes me out of the chance at higher education if I choose it. So effectively, let's usher transgender people right out of American life. And then after that, we're going to go after the rest of those letters. We're going to go after that LGBTQ and everything else, which means we're going to go after the marriage rights. We're going to go after employment. We're going to go after all those things that so many people fought so hard all the way to before Stonewall for. And then we'll go after a few things that even cisgender people will hold dear, like reproductive rights, like employment rights, like protection against sexual assault. Remember, the Republicans voted against that a couple of years ago. Oh, and while you're at it, we'll go after Price Waterhouse. We'll tell you how we can fire you because you don't dress feminine enough and June Cleaver enough for us. That's how far these people are willing to go. And here's the thing. They don't deny it. Again, I'm not saying anything about these groups pushing this that they haven't already said about themselves. And in the case of some people, this is a way to jockey for position for 2024. Why is Ron DeSantis signing that bill in Florida? Why? Because he wants to win the New Hampshire primary in 24. He wants to flank himself to the right of Donald Trump, if possible, to keep either Trump out or go after his base. There's a lot of people that are doing this because they're already thinking about they want the keys to the White House and they are willing to ride over the corpses of transgender Americans to do it.
Mm-hmm. One mic drop after another, Karleigh. That is so right on point. And it's, there needs to be that coordinated pushback against these groups that you mentioned, who, by the way, are listed as classified hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So we need to know where these groups come from and what their true motivations are. So, Lendale, I just wanted to ask, obviously, when looking at the history of the movement for LGBTQ folks, obviously starting at the Stonewall with Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, trans women of color who fought back. And, there's always been this sort of attempt by some to sort of divide and conquer, divide the LGB portion of the community from every other letter in the community. So just out of curiosity, Lendale, when you see these attacks on the trans community, what's your reaction to it?
I feel like if you attack one of us, you're attacking all of us. And so with that being said, we all have to come together, whether it doesn't matter how we identify in the community as far as LGBTQI, we all need to come together in solidarity for the greater good, for all these situations that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And Lendale, I just want to kind of continue on with you, particularly with this theme about, what sports are all about, what sports means to us. And sports obviously serve multiple purposes, but a lot of what I see in this surge in anti-trans bills, particularly within the context of sports, is, it's warped thinking in a lot of ways, it's warped thinking across the board. But it's also been seen through the lens of sport being about winning and losing, as if that's what sports are all about. At the end of the day, is about winning, losing, and revenue. And certainly, there's benefits to learning about winning and losing. That's just life. We all win, we all lose at times, but you can't have sport without the social, emotional, and physical benefits that come with it. And so, Lendale, let me ask you, what has sport meant to you in your life? What has sport given you?
Well, I feel like, sport has allowed me to live my dreams. I've never been in such a powerful position, and I feel like without tennis, I would not be where I am whatsoever. But back to the other question, I want to say, I feel like, people, live and die with sports. Sporting fans, we live and die. Sports are so serious. Everyone takes us athletes very serious as far as what we have to say, as far as what we do, our statements, when we have press conferences and interviews. So I feel like athletes, we really do run the world. And I feel like we run, the social norms and cultural norms also. it's really huge.
Absolutely. You know, athletes have a way of reaching people that.
Yeah, I mean, look what Michael Jordan did. I don't want to cut you off, but look what Michael Jordan did, like, and still doing. It's really incredible.
Absolutely.
I just had an interview the other day, and I was telling everyone that I feel like us as athletes, I believe I feel like we have more power than the presidency. I feel like we have a lot of power. I mean, a president can only go so far, but I feel like athletes, we have a certain superpower. I feel like us as athletes, we have a certain superpower that's like nothing else, for sure.
Absolutely. And history speaks for itself in that way. And so, Karleigh, just kind of wanted to continue on that theme. I mean, obviously, learning about you and learning about your career journey, obviously, sports played a crucial role in your life and how you see the world. So just share with us a little bit about what sports means to you.
Sports for me meant a place to be, a place to express myself, and in some ways a place to hide. And later in life, especially as I went to my life and later went to my transition, it was a place for me to reaffirm myself. It was a place at one time to hide, but since my transition, it really became a place in many ways to heal and to affirm not just my truth, my identity, but also my power. At another level, sports is uplifting. I mean, we're talking about what the power of sports can do. I think of the power of sports that stops whole countries, like it's doing right now with Euro 2021 going on. I'm looking at the power of sport in terms of German sports fans who basically told Viktor Orban where he can go a few nights ago. I'm looking at the power of sport. I'm thinking of Didier Drogba in 2006. Right after getting Cote d'Ivoire into a World Cup, he stands in front of a television camera with his teammates, gets on their knees and says, "End the civil war in our country, Ivorians. End this civil war. Let's have elections. We're going to the World Cup. We want you all together and united, rooting for us." Sports at its best has stopped wars. I look at Marcus Ransford and what he's done the last couple of years in drawing attention to childhood hunger in Britain. He's using that sporting platform, playing for probably the most famous team in the world right now, to draw attention. I look at Wnba right now. That's the power of sports in the large sense of getting people to reevaluate our society. And we really need to reevaluate ourselves right now. We need to reevaluate in many ways, especially after what we've seen over the last year and what's happened. And again, with what's happening in our country in regards to this savage attack on the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable. You're going after kids. And you're using sports to go after kids. Now, if the NFL is going to say football is transgender, Commissioner Goodell, you have a chance to prove it. 15 states that have NFL teams have either introduced this anti-trans legislation, they've either passed it or they've defeated it. It's time for those 21 NFL teams in those 15 states to say, from owners to management to coaches to players to yourself, we value inclusion and we want you to do the same. And also a special note to Arizona and Louisiana. Commissioner Goodell, they're hosting Super Bowls 57 and 58. You've pulled a Super Bowl before for the cause of doing right. I'm asking you, as a transgender woman who is a huge football fan, be prepared to do it again, sir.
Absolutely. And just for those who don't know, the state of Arizona pulled the Super Bowl in 1990. The Super Bowl was pulled out of Arizona in 1993 after the state didn't recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And there was a tremendous pushback against the state of Arizona. There were boycotts. Stevie Wonder refused to perform in Arizona as a result of that. Public Enemy, the honorable and courageous hip hop group, did a song called By the Time
I get to Arizona. By the time I get to Arizona.
That's right. That really put Arizona on pause. And as a result, the Super Bowl was pulled out of Arizona because of the pushback. So, and then to your point earlier, Karleigh, about the NFL, we can also include in there the NCAA, because the NCAA earlier this year put out a statement saying that they supported transgender athletes in the transgender community, but yet they turn around and then they host a softball tournament. I believe it was in Arkansas after one of these laws was introduced, if not passed. So that pressure needs to be put on all of these governing bodies and leagues across the board.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the NCAA do that. I'd also love to see the college football playoff do that, because where are a number of their semifinals and finals being played? Georgia, who's considering those bills, Arizona considering those bills, Florida that passed them. And there is a future college football national championship game that will be played in Houston, Texas. And Texas tried to ram 13 of those bills through, thankfully, by a lot of shoe leather, a lot of activists, and the spirit of the late great Monica Roberts. None of those attempts passed through, but they're going to try it again at the next legislative session. That's a saying you can believe in. They're never going to stop, so neither can we.
Absolutely. And then I would encourage everybody watching to look up Monica Roberts. May she rest in power for everything that she did in her life and career. Lendale, obviously, Karleigh just mentioned about the NFL's recent ad in response to Carl Nassib coming out and sharing his story. What did you make of the NFL putting out that ad? What was your reaction to it?
I've been offline, so I'm not sure. I think I might have saw it though on like a real. Was it when it said like NFL and it said like NFL is gay, the NFL is XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I was shocked. I was really very shocked.
Yeah, and you would, because the NFL, I mean, if we're going to be honest at this point, football is by default America's national pastime, really. And
everyone and their mother and dad and grandpa and grandma and
it's the most popular sport in the country. It is.
And I feel like now that this has happened, I feel like there's going to be a lot of kids that are ignorant because of their parents not educating them about LGBTQ rights. They're going to be like, Mom, Dad, what's gay? What's LGBTQ? What's trans? And I feel like because of that ad, it's given the visibility that we need. So.
Absolutely. And really, obviously intersectionality is important and it matters a lot. So we can't talk about LGBTQ plus equality without talking about the ongoing struggle for racial justice or immigrant justice or gender justice. They all go hand in hand.
That all has to do with systematic situations and all of those the dynamic, they are all relevant to the systematic situations that need to be addressed.
And
Exactly.
Certainly.
And it's simple. It's simple to say, but then getting these systems strategically lifted and properly put back in place, it's going to take time for sure.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to shift gears here because obviously along that theme of sort of connecting the dots, and then Lendale, I'll go to you for this. And we had talked before, obviously we all saw what was going on with, we all saw what happened to Naomi Osaka in the world of tennis after she declined to speak to the press during the French Open as a way to focus on her mental health. She was willing to pay the fine, and she was going to insist that they give the money to mental health initiatives. And then she ultimately dropped out of the French Open after the way that she was being treated. And then Lendale, you and I talked briefly about, your experience being on the professional tour and the toll that takes on mental health. And we want to make sure that this discussion around mental health doesn't fall by the wayside. What do you make of this of that whole situation?
With Naomi?
With Naomi, yeah.
Well, again, I feel everyone, every athlete, to each its own. Like, I can't speak for every athlete, but I do know there are certain pressures and situations that we go through. For Naomi's case, she felt it was best for her to, take a break, and I feel like it's really, really shifted the conversation, and it's really been a light towards the issues with the media and athletes. I feel like it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, the situation.
Yeah, and Karleigh, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously, given your position as a journalist, as a sports journalist, obviously the paradigm shift that we're seeing in athletes' relationship to the media and how athletes are covered. We're seeing athletes, especially in the era of social media, using that platform to be able to take control over the narrative. What do you make of this changing of the guard, if you will, when it comes to athletes and their relationship with the media?
Well, if you look at it in historical context, it really isn't that much of a changing of the guard. This is, to me, it's the next evolution, because players are more and more taking control of their own careers. I mean, we saw that from unionization in baseball and football in the 1970s. We saw that with players making their marketing deals in the 80s and 90s, especially in the NBA, and we're seeing more of that now. And now we're seeing efforts like the Players Tribune. We're seeing things such as Serena Williams just starting her own production company and, in effect, building her own media arm to get her story out. Shaquille O'Neal did the same thing. I mean, he built an editing studio in his house so that if there's something he didn't like in a commercial, he would re-edit it himself. You're seeing more and more.
I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry, but it's very relevant to what you're saying. So Novak Djokovic, he's the world #1 player right now. He's the founder, and he's currently the founder and I think head of the tour that he's creating. He's creating like a separate tour. It's called the PPAP. It's a whole separate union type of situation for professional tennis players. This has literally been like, I think maybe 46 years in the making. There's never been a union for professional tennis players. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people are for it. I just want to say that because it links to how she mentioned how, athletes and players are trying to kind of create their own path.
But that is mainly what more and more athletes are looking to do, because what we're just really realizing from all this ultimately is that athletes are people too. Mm-hmm. They are not gladiators. They are not Robotech mechas. They're people. They are people too, and they hurt and they crack just like everyone else. I mean, a perfect example of what we're talking about here is Serena Williams. Serena Williams is one of the greatest athletes of our time. Yet she nearly died giving childbirth because she wasn't heard in a hospital because she's saying she's in pain. Simple things like that can still happen to you, no matter if you are one of these mighty gladiators that people supposedly worship while they're watching Sports Center. And athletes more and more understanding it, and athletes more and more understanding their own power in the relationship and in the dynamic. And that is what's upsetting some people, especially owners, especially officials. And that's what upsets people, that players are realizing that no, we are the product that you want to see, not some billionaire owner, not some potentate, not some dime store Bernie Ecclestone who runs a tour. The players are the product. They're what people paid their money to see, and players are more and more realizing that. So it's a different world in athletics, and part of that world is I choose not to talk to you. And as a journalist, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, kind of filter on that. There's actually a very high percentage of childhood death for women of color, and it's because of the racism in the hospitals.
I mean, but that's healthcare across the board. I mean, I fired a doctor who told me, who I overheard saying, well, black people don't feel pain. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very racist.
Racist. And you know, we saw that, you know, bringing it back to sports, we just saw going back to the NFL with what was revealed when they were engaging in quote unquote race norming that essentially denied former players their just compensation from years of abuse on the field and enduring traumatic brain injuries.
I saw that and I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They literally had a racist, statement in the NFL contract that's been there forever and nothing's been done about it. I just can't.
What my first thought was that was just the opinion of black quarterbacks on crystal meth with a crack chaser in a lot of ways. It's like there was always the book in the NFL that there were certain positions you don't put the black guy because the black guy is not smart enough to play him. And now that's just taking that particular mentality from the sublime to the ridiculous to its nth degree right there. And honestly, I'm a little bit surprised that the Players Association has not raised more of a stink on that. I mean, that's something you strike over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that's something you strike over. But then again, a lot of players kind of like, a lot of players left Colin Kaepernick hanging for a couple of years. And don't forget, we still can't forget about him. I mean, it's great, for example, that Carl Nassib came out and now the NFL is singing some Lady Gaga, but how soon we all forget. Mm-hmm. This is the same NFL who said, since you don't want to play the game our way, boy, you can watch it over there with Colin Kaepernick. So I'm not buying the NFL all of a sudden saying it's okay to beat decay right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one reason why.
Absolutely. Because, if there's any entity, and we can go down the list, if there's any entity or corporation that is that epitomizes performative activism, it's the NFL. All of a sudden after this past year, Roger Goodell puts out a video saying that he now gets it. But then, to your point, Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job. There are no black owners in the NFL, and there are only 3 black head coaches. So the NFL has a lot of work to do and a lot of explaining to do, and they refuse to do that. And that's why the pushback is necessary and needed. And so, and really just kind of that brings me to my next question really is just to really discuss what it is that we can do to engage in this, to engage in our own pushback, to engage in an effective response. I mean, if you're thinking about it through the lens of politics, I mean, obviously next year is an election year, is a crucial election year. And no doubt, these anti-trans bills are going to be wedge issues in the election. And so there's opportunity to have some ground game, particularly in the sports world, to push back against these bills that are being introduced and passed. So, Karleigh, let me ask you, what do you think can be an effective strategy, or what can that effective strategy, that effective ground game can be to push back against these bills as we go into an election year?
Well, for starters, first, arm yourself with knowledge. And one good place to get it is transathlete.com. That's Chris Mosier's website, where basically Chris has been tracking the regulations and tracking the legislation. I mean, and once again, I got to shout out Chris for doing Herculean work in this effort. Another thing, I think what we all need to do is follow the lead of the WNBA. And what the WNBA did was, as a league, they came together and said, this matters, and they strategized, and they put together a coherent strategy, and they've stayed with it, and they've continued to stay with it, and they continue to build on it. And I think that's what players in every league need to be doing, because the WNBA has been quietly doing this for years. And when the moment of truth came up, they were there, and not only were they out there, they were leading the way. Why did NBA players have Black Lives Matter on their jersey? Because WNBA players led the way on that. A lot of the activism that you saw last year that you saw last year began with a league that everybody tries to lift their leg on. I mean, you can, after last year, the WNBA, example of the power sports, the WNBA in many ways helped save American democracy by willing two Senate wins away from the Trump train.
Mhm.
That big voter turnout, Laisha Clarendon and Nico Gumake and the WNBA players, they're responsible for a good deal of that. So I think no one should ever lift a leg on the WNBA again. And if you do, shame on you. And I think every league needs to look at that. Now, as far as the trans bills, it's about getting involved. It is about be willing to get involved. First, arm yourself with the knowledge, and there's a lot of ways to get that knowledge. And then just be there and act, even in any way, big and small. It doesn't have to be a big grand gesture, just showing up and lending your voice and lending your team's voice to it. That can make a world of difference. People think you need all these big things. No, revolution is not one big thing. It is a lot of small things continually done consistently over time. That's how change gets made. You do it consistently and you do it every day. And sometimes you're going to take steps back. But every one step back is followed by 4 steps forward and 4 more steps forward. And before you know it, you have a safer and better society. And people have to realize it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a fight. The reactionaries are going to fight you tooth and nail. But the point is, the fight needs to be fought because history has shown us. First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win. Right now, the reactionaries are trying to hang on by their fingernails. That's how desperate they are. They are making picking on kids and wearing a mask their hill they're willing to die on. That's how desperate the reactionaries in this country are. If we stay together, pull together, we'll win, and we can change things for the better across the board, not just on that issue, but on a whole host of issues. And in many ways, we've already done it, and sports has led the way.
Absolutely. Lendale, do you have a response to that?
I agree with everything she said. She said more than I could say.
And so, Lendale, let me ask you, given where you're at right now as a professional tennis player, and obviously you do so much amazing work, not just on the court, but off the court. You have your tennis academy, you're a TV personality, you have your modeling career. So you exist in all of these different spaces to really get your message out and to really articulate, your vision. And so what's it been like for you to engage in all of these different areas to be able to be yourself?
Well, I've always been very open to learning new things. And if I'm not happy about something, then I'm going to try my best to make it be known, whether I have to actively do it or find someone that's doing what I am trying to get done. So I always say it's always best to find a mentor or you see someone doing something and they're doing what you're trying to do, right? Reach out to them and see if you can be a part of it. So it's all of that, the networking, and just really being transparent with things that you hold close to your heart, for sure.
Lendale, I want to ask you something, because you're running your tennis academy and you're doing some great work and you're trying to open up this game. I play tennis too, and it's a great game, and I want to see it more opened up. After all this time and what we've seen with Venus and Serena, where we've seen tennis get on a stage in a way that tennis hasn't gone on before, and I'm a child of Chrissy and Martina, and a child of McEnroe and Connors and Arthur Ashe. I saw the heights that tennis can go to, but now tennis went beyond the stratosphere. When Serena's on, it's required viewing. Why hasn't the USTA especially grabbed hold of this and realized we have to democratize this game? Why do they still seem resistant to efforts like the ones you're doing?
Well, I've been actually working with the USTA's diversity inclusion manager, David, his name's David, and they've been trying to promote diversity. So The USA is doing a good job. I feel like they could do a better job, but they are trying. I just feel like there's certain situations in their system that's not really run in the way that it should be, and I feel like they have a lot of people in positions of power that really are ignorant and in regards to things that need to change. So,
I mean, if let's say we put you in charge of the USTA, Lendale Johnson, you're running tennis. You're now running tennis in this country.
Well,
what would you want to see?
I actually just got an email from Katrina Adams. I spoke with her. Katrina Adams, she was the first female president for the USTA for a while, I believe. I asked her to if I could interview her for my show. She declined. I don't know why she declined, but no. If I ran the USTA, it would be, I think it'd just be more inclusive. And I feel like honestly, there's a ton of white people that are running the USTA and they want things done a certain way. And because of them being in those positions of power, there's not much that we can do. So, but other than that, we're trying. I mean, some people like to butter up the USTA. I'm not someone that wants to, do that. So.
Well, I can tell you, I'm asking that in a lot of ways because as a kid, I got introduced to tennis because the USTA, when I was a little kid, had a program that they ran through city park and rec departments where they were literally giving away free cans of ball, free really good rackets. Now, granted, this was in the days BG before graphite. So it was a wood racket. But the point is, you got a free, you took part in the summer tennis series, you played in some tournaments, you got good instruction, and you got a good quality racket. And sometimes that's all it takes for, I mean, when I look at diversity in sport, and right now I'm also heavy in triathlon, and I work with a couple groups here that are trying to open that sport up to more and more kids. And I think it's one thing we have to open sport up, especially to young people, because we've spent the last 20 years trying to close sport off. Now everybody and their mama's got a travel team. And now everything's about how much money you can spend and how many trips you can go and who Nike signs. We have actually taken more kids out of sport than we've actually allowed through the gate. And sports has become, and at the same time, sports has become this big business. And to me, sports can be so much. Don't take it away from young people. Let's bring back the old park and rec leagues. Let's bring back the concepts that everybody gets to play again. Mm-hmm. You know what? Let's bring back let's have a year where we don't have youth sport, where we tell kids, if you want to play, choose up, go to a sandlot, choose up sides, us adults stay out of it. Let's try it for a year, see if it works. I just want to see, I love sports, and sports did a lot for me as a kid, and I'm not seeing that same ethos now.
Well, I don't think the USTA, they're not really doing a good job with their development program. We haven't seen any top American players do a really good job. There's issues internally with their coaching. People will sign up, and there's a lot of turnover. And I also believe we need to get more POC children into tennis, specifically because I feel like everyone is so focused on the NFL, and basketball is so promoted, massively promoted in America and around the world, basketball and the NFL. And I feel like as people of color, we really need to get our children into tennis because we are very athletic. And I feel like we need more Black people in tennis.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the point about, sport, getting back to those foundational principles of why we're drawn to sport in the first place. The love of the game, and to be able to compete and to be able to, play alongside others that we care about and others that we can enjoy the experience of being an athlete in. And, that's why these bills that are being introduced are counter to that. And so it's such a huge, we really need to go back to why we're drawn to sport in the first place. And to Karleigh's point about park and recs leagues and sandlots, I mean, with adults not being present to co-opt it, that's where we get our love from sports to begin with, whether it's playing sandlot, whether it's, playing a game of pickup basketball, or just shooting a basketball or shooting hoops in the driveway. Just little things like that are things.
The nuances.
Awesome.
Those are huge. Yeah, the little nuances are so important. But yeah, kids need to get immersed in all sports, when they're little, so they can find out, what is the sport that they are going to be into. You don't want parents to be pushing the sport on the kid. You really want the kid to find the love of the game on their own. And I feel like that's when you get, incredible athletes come from that type of environment.
That's true. And I want to see more of that, but I also want to see sport be more open. Let's open up, which means our minds and our hearts have to be more open. And I think that's one place where these bills really do.
Can you elaborate on that? You said our minds need to be more open.
Our minds and our hearts need to be open. Why? Yes. One reason why these bills are going through these legislatures, because a lot of these people that are putting this legislation together, what they're telling you, Mr. and Mrs. America? We think you hate trans people as much as we do. Just like we thought you hate gay people as much as we
is still
do.
Divided. America is still divided. I mean, honestly.
Oh yes,
very much.
But here's the thing: it doesn't need to be. All we have to do is open. All you gotta do is open your hearts. For starters, you have to open our hearts and open our minds and actually see each other.
Right, but
part of seeing each other is playing together. That can be part of it. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I know what society I live in. Oh, trust me, I'm black and trans in America. I know I'm black, trans, and 50 years old. I've seen a half century of what society I live in. But I also believe we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to do better and be better. We took that opportunity to the streets last year, even in the middle of a global pandemic. It's possible and it's doable. But again, why did we do that last year? Yeah, some people did it for the selfie, but a lot of people knew we have to do something.
It was necessary.
Yes, it was.
There was no turning back. I mean, with the severity of the situation with George Floyd and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
People had enough. Honestly, we had enough. This had shook people to their very souls and their core, and people had enough, and then racism and homophobia, it's taught, it stems from the apple, that saying, the apple doesn't fall from the tree, so again, the racism is taught, homophobia is taught. You don't just, kids aren't just like that. So
no, kids aren't.
It's but and again, we need to hold each American accountable.
Yes, we do. And but what I'm also saying is, where does that fight begin? Where does that fight begin?
Education is huge. And I also believe that life will be our biggest educator. Mm-hmm. Life will be our biggest educator for sure. But that, again, all this stuff stems from the home. It stems from education. So if people don't have money for education, that's just adding to the issue. But
I'm reminded of something my grandfather told me often, that an open mind, an open heart, and open ears will prevent a hard head and a soft bottom.
Yeah, I mean, people unlearn. They just have to be willing to take that initiative and be willing to accept your ignorance and say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Let me take a couple steps back and show me what I need to do. Help me change my thinking. Unlearn and relearn. It's
exactly. I'm with you on that. And also open your heart and open your mind, because that's where the bravery comes in. When you're open, when you come from a place of love. I don't do my activism from a place of hate of the people who are coming after me. I do it from a place of love, first of all, for my rainbow family, who were my rainbow family, my queer family, who, when I was trying to figure myself out, they were there. That's the first place. The second place, especially for especially for trans youth, because I'll always have a soft spot, because it was the first person who told me your egg is cracking and it's time for you to get with it was a little 8-year-old trans boy who I met 9 years ago. That kid, that little badass kid, is now a freshman in college. And when I look at these trans youth, when I look at a kid like that little Kyle Shipley down in Texas, when I look at the bravery of these kids to step into a state legislature and say, I am an American, I am a citizen, I am a child of God, protect me, respect me, or you're going to meet my resistance. When you see that type of bravery, that's the love. And that's what keeps me pushing on. So yes, Lendale, I agree with you. It's going to take education. It's going to take work, but it has to start with that love. You have to have enough of that love to get out in them streets.
Love heals, love is love. And you have to realize that people have different hearts. People have different hearts. People are stubborn, they're ignorant, and people love in different ways. And so if you look at it that way in the different dynamics, maybe there could be a template where it's like, okay, do this, do that, and this will lead you towards the ultimate goal. But it's going to take time. And again, it starts from education, and it starts from the mind. It starts from the heart. It starts from personal experiences with people that are actually in your life circle. That's really going to, make people change. And I think religion plays a big part in it as well. I feel like a lot of things in the Bible are really created to push hate, the homophobia. A lot of homophobic people really use the Bible and religion and just kind of pull these things out of the Bible and use it as a tool against LGBTQ athletes.
But that's another place. But that's another place where that love comes in, because love leads to bravery. Love leads to bravery, and bravery leads to action. And and you're talking about somebody who loves the Lord. I love the Lord with all my heart, and it grieves me to see how some people, again, all these groups that are pushing these bills are all who claim to see American is a quote unquote America is that Christian nation. Give me a break, y'all. All they are is the money changers at the temple. Now, my faith compels me. My faith compels me to face down a Christiana Holcomb. My faith compels me to do that, no matter what. I mean, that's on a spiritual plane as well. But again, it comes back to that heart, that you have to have that love to hit those streets in the middle of a global pandemic. You have to have that love. If you don't, especially if you don't have the love of the people, because what if Fred Hampton always said it best? It's that we're driven not by the hate against the adversary, but by the love of our people. And that's what has to carry us forward. Yes, love does win, but we're going to have to beat hate. We're going to have to slap hate around to do it. And that's where the fight comes in. We have work to do.
I saw this phrase online. They're like, okay, a nice person can be a nice person, but if you need to tell someone off or give somebody your backhand, do it. That's not going to make you a bad person.
No, it's not.
And I just wanted to say what Karleigh was saying, quoting Fred Hampton. The Fred Hampton quote that I always think about is, you can jail the revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution. And right now we're in revolutionary times, and no matter how hard they try to clamp down on the revolution, they may castigate revolutionaries, but that revolution is alive and well, and it's not going anywhere. And
no, it's not.
And I just wanted to say, like, to both of your points about love and education, they're not mutually exclusive. They all go hand in hand. So I think just from carrying those ethos with us and embracing those ethos, we can be able to make some inroads, and it's going to take a collective power.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
And so we are just about out of time, but before we go, I do want to give some space for both of you to share where people can follow you, can support all the work that you're doing. So Lendale, I'll start with you. Where can people follow you and support the work that you're doing?
Oh, yes. So I do have a new newsletter on my website. It's lendalejohnson.com. That's LendaleJohnson.com. My social media accounts are Lendale Johnson as well for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Very active on Twitter and Instagram. Not as much recently as far as Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter during like the Grand Slams. I tweet a lot during like the Wimbledon, the French Open, and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely pretty active on Instagram for sure.
Awesome. And then Karleigh, where can folks support you in the work that you're doing?
Well, to begin with, you can, obviously can read me in OutSports, outsports.com, the world's leading LGBTQ sports site. On my Twitter, I'm at Chardonnay __M. And I also at Transporter Room for the podcast, the Transporter Room on Instagram. I'm at RocketDine1965. If you want to know more, just hit me at my Twitter. But there's also one important thing that there's two important things I want to throw out tonight. In addition to that, in fact, the new edition of the Transporter Room podcast, this week's edition, we're getting deep into what Laurel Hubbard could mean. We're getting deep into that. And that's going to be this week's topic. I want you to we talk a little bit about things like the NFL, and we talk about the Trans Pride March in London, and we talk about Dawn Barry. And I want to send a quick acknowledgement to Dawn Barry. Dawn, we are with you. I am with you.
You mean Gwen Barry?
Excuse me, Gwen Barry. Yeah, Gwen Barry. Typical sportscaster mess up at least one name. Gwen Barry, we're with you. I stand with you. Don't get into the haters. You be ready to throw that hammer in Tokyo, and hopefully you'll be able to speak your piece from the top of the podium at the Olympics, because that piece needs to be said. And also a last quick note, because this is something near and dear to my heart. When I'm not writing sports, talking about sports, doing podcasts, or a lot of the other things I do, I'm a crisis and peer support operator for Trans Lifeline, North America's only 24-hour day, 7-day a week help, support, and crisis line that was started by trans people and is 100% staffed by transgender people for our community. And I want to talk to all, especially young trans kids. I know you're up against it right now. I know that you're seeing all these things across this country, and I know it's scary. It scares me, and I'm a lot older than a lot of you. But know this, we are not going to let you fall. We are going to have your back. And if you find the pressures a little much and you just need to talk, or you need to celebrate something good is happening, or you just want to kick it around and have somebody who understands at the other end of that conversation, 1-877-565-8860, 877-565-8860. Trans Lifeline. It's of us, by us, for us, and for you.
Well said. And it's such an important lifeline. And there we have the number right there. So, Lendale, did you have one more quick thing you wanted to say?
I'm really excited about the progress we've made for visibility as LGBTQ athletes. It's been incredible, and I see the future being very bright. With me being a double minority in my sport and making history as the first Wnba tennis player, I really feel that we really need to focus on just, again, holding each other accountable, for sure, and supporting each other and showing that love. Showing the love.
Amen.
Love.
This was such an amazing program. Lendale Johnson, Karleigh Chardonnay Webb, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. This was such a
6060. Oh my God, Novak. I think I'm going to interview him, actually. He's been very supportive. Again, Novak, the world #1 player in the world right now. Novak Djokovic has supported an LGBTQ athlete on the men's tour. So I'm definitely going to reach out to his PR team and see if we can get some more.
That's awesome.
Well, Lendale, where can I catch your show? Because I'm very interested in that. Where can I catch it?
Yeah, Juices in Love will air on Amazon Prime later this year in August. So So.
All right. You getting big stuff right there. Okay, I'm a Prime member, so I'm definitely gonna watch.
Okay, I'm excited. Yeah, because I really want people to know what it's like for a minority with my situation to, book jobs and different things like that in the pandemic. So it's been, very, very interesting. So there is not a show out there like this, and I'm really hoping it'll shed light on a lot of things that have been in the dark.
You are on such a roll, Lendale. And he always, I gotta say, just one more quick thing before we wrap up. He always sends me these Facebook messages just saying, I love it.
I can't hold it inside. It just comes out. I'm like, I've got to tell somebody. I was like, I'll tell Zach. I know he won't say anything about it.
Well, I love it. I love all the things that you're doing, and it just really shows that the sky is the limit for you, and you just got so many great things. And we'll definitely keep watching you and keep following you and all the work that you're doing. Same to you, Karleigh. So thank you again both for joining us this evening for such an important and timely conversation. And so our thanks once again to both Karleigh and to Lendale. And before we go, I want to take this time to make a statement of support to one of the most courageous athletes of our time. And you heard her name multiple times during this evening, and that's none other than American hammer thrower Wnba. After placing third in the Olympic trials and solidifying a spot on the team for the upcoming Tokyo Games, Gwen made a statement during the playing of the national anthem. She turned her back from the flag and proudly displayed a shirt reading "Activist Athlete." The vicious reaction among the insurrectionist crowd was pure misogynoir, racialized misogyny. Some even had the audacity to call for her removal from the team or demand that she leave the country. These are the same people who rally against so-called cancel culture and are infiltrating school boards demanding that the true history of this country not be taught based on a theory that they don't know anything about that isn't even taught in schools, talking about critical race theory. They are also the most intellectually lazy among us, whose response to Gwen's protest is to say that she should leave America if she doesn't like it here. She is more patriotic than they will ever be because, to paraphrase James Baldwin, she loves this country so much that she is willing to critique it perpetually. She embodies the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the fullest when he said on the night before his assassination in Memphis that America needed to stay true to what it said on paper. Gwen loves this country enough to do her part to see it become what it preaches. And no matter what these people say, Gwen will not be deterred, and she is taking that fighting spirit all the way to Tokyo and beyond. And those of good conscience will support her every step of the way. Be sure to follow NBS and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Zachary Draves, and on behalf of the NBS team, thank you for watching and have a good night.